Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Infinite I Am global event, in which we will gather for powerful conversations with scientists, wisdom keepers, shamans, healers, intuitives, astrologers, visionaries, to bring a deep understanding of our relation to the divine, to all that is, has been, and will always be. This event is designed to open up space for all of us to remember the infinite and powerful light being that we all are, to acknowledge the sacredness of everything, to restore the ancient knowledge of living in oneness, to consciously honor our choice to incarnate in this moment of time and offer our unique contribution for recreating the indigenous way of living on Earth. Here you're invited to tune into the wisdom and the healing energy created in these conversations and experience your own deep transformation. I'm your host and the creator of this event, Veselka Nikolova, and today I'm very excited to present to you Dr. John Ryan. Welcome, John.
Hi, Veselka. Thank you so much. And a big hello to the whole listening audience as well. Good day to all.
I'm so excited to have you on the summit. You were a part of the last year's summit, Speaking the Language of the Soul. And I would say, sorry, quite a few of our viewers know about you. But for the others who are meeting you for the first time, I would like to introduce you, and I will read your short bio.
Okay.
So Dr. John Ryan, medical doctor, is a professor of medicine and a practitioner of energy and consciousness-based medicine. He is an author of Unity Field Healing Volume 1, Foundations of Energy Medicine and Quantum Healing. This book is a holistic primer designed to bring to the reader a panoramic understanding of the awakening power of spiritual consciousness and spiritual consciousness and energy-based healing, and serve as a practical and personal tool to deeply integrate this new human potential. He is a founder of Unity Field Healing, a new quantum process based on conscious activation of the DNA field to support healing and personal evolution. He channels the Sirian Blue-White Collective, who support Unity Field Healing and humanity's ascension through monthly transmissions and channeled messages. So, John, I'm excited about your topic today, which is a time for deep awakening. And I would like to ask you, now you are a medical doctor and work in the domain of quantum healing as well. So could you tell us a little about your history and where it has brought you in your understanding of spiritual awakening?
Yes, of course. So I'll try to abbreviate this a little, Veselka, just because many people know a little bit about my history. So I'll kind of give the highlights of the past and sort of a short understanding of what brought me to the kind of work I do today. So I am, as you mentioned, I'm a physician. I'm a professor of medicine, and I work in the domain of diagnostic imaging. So with CT, MRI imaging, these types of things, and teach at the university as well. And so my spiritual background kind of goes back in time, many years at this point, and the spiritual aspect of my career and the more traditional medical aspect of my career have both grown kind of side by side each other through the years. But just as I was finishing medical school back in the 80s, I wasn't really seeking spiritual experience or spiritual information. in a very spontaneous way, I began to have these energetic experiences. And what would happen to me back in, so this is like the late 1980s, early 1990s, I would go to bed and I would lie down and I would start to have these vibratory experiences where my body would start to surge with energy. And I would begin to see energy outside the body. And one night I kind of popped out of my body and had an out of body experience, a conscious out of body experience. And so I began to understand through these experiences that our consciousness and our physical body are not necessarily always one and the same. Our consciousness is something that exists somewhat independent of the body, even though it's deeply integrated, of course, into the body. But our consciousness is not limited to the body. And so this began for me a series of a curiosity, if you will, and kind of a series of explorations and interests. And one kind of synchronicity led to another. And as I was living this, I started, to be honest, at the time, I didn't have a background that provided any context for this understanding. I wasn't raised, with knowledge of Eastern systems of medicine or yoga or meditation and these kinds of things, very Western upbringing. And I was a little worried about what was happening. And so one synchronicity would lead to an answer or a solution. And so I was led to information one day in a bookstore. It was a book called The Spontaneous Awakening of Kundalini. And it began to mirror, as I read through the book, it mirrored so many of the things that I was experiencing in my own personal experience. And so it was kind of like a spiritual awakening. I was, brought to this information, and it began to help me understand the nature of the experience that I was living. And so this literally blew open my mind. Like I was not quite sure what to do with all this information, but I began to understand that there's so much more to life, to reality. And then eventually came to understand that the experiences are not happening for no reason. There's a very deep spiritual purpose as to why I was living these kinds of things. And so what happened for me was I began to explore healing outside of the traditional Western model of healing. So I started to look at yogic systems of healing and teaching, and deep, deep embedded knowledge in humanity that comes from thousands and thousands of years ago in the various Eastern traditions. And so as my knowledge grew and my experience grew, I also began to have other experiences. I began to see energy fields at times when I was working or counseling a person. I would start to have spontaneous visions at times and see things in my mind's eye, or my what people refer to as your third eye or pineal gland or pituitary gland. And I would see and be taught things in this state. And as I would do meditation, sometimes I would be shown visions, if you will, or kind of like they're dream-like experiences where you're shown something in a very visual way, like when we have a dream when we're asleep, but it would be while I was awake in a meditation. And the visions would have a lot of coded information. They'd be full of pictures that had really symbolic representations of things that had to be almost decoded. It was like a mystery. You'd see a picture, there it would contain certain things. It would have certain colors, things would be positioned in a certain way, so on and so forth. That every aspect of what I was being shown had some meaning in the big picture. So it was like this highly symbolic kind of an image or film, but I would later be able to kind of understand the essence or the meaning of what all the bits and pieces of the experience was about. And this began to teach me things. And so as I lived through these experiences, I was introduced to information that was not kind of available in any books or things that I had kind of encountered. I had had some experiences where I was seeing chakras, for example, or seeing healing as it occurred through the various chakra levels of the body and these types of things. But the visions turned into something that started talking about a chromosome, a 24th chromosome. And so it explained that there's an energy field that's part of the human energy anatomy that we've not been talking a lot about in spiritual systems until more recent times. And it began to teach me how to work in this field of energy to help people heal and move forward in consciousness, growth, and evolution. Coupled with that, I was made aware of the importance of this time on the planet. And I began to understand there's something happening on the earth that is incredibly powerful and profound. It's a time of great transition for humanity. And this has been reflected in lots of spiritual cultures and spiritual teachings. For example, the Mayans spoke of the end times, or the end time date of December 21, 2012 is the ending of a big cosmic consciousness cycle, and that humanity would begin a new cycle of experience or evolution. And so I was shown a lot of information about that in some of the visions that I had. And it began to awaken memories, sort of Akashic memories, if you will. And I was reminded of the fact that when I was born, I knew as a child that there were two potential futures for the planet. One was that the Earth would go into a decline, like many civilizations that rise and then fall after they kind of reach the zenith of their expression. But the other option for humanity would be an awakening, a spiritual awakening that would propel or catalyze humanity to begin moving forward into a much different and what we could refer to as an ascended state of civilization. And so I knew that the 80s would be a time when this would be decided in the big picture of humanity. So people speak of the harmonic convergence, of course, that took place in August of 1987. And that's kind of an earmark for the time when the final decision was made which path humanity would take. And so we decided to go for the ascension. And so that triggered a whole other series of energetic changes and awakenings. And it's really timed with when I began to experience my personal experiences, the kinds of things that I was describing earlier. And so this triggered this awakening process that will take place over the next hundreds and thousands of years as humanity moves forward into this next time cycle. But as we step in or cross the threshold into this new time, one of the big things that becomes important is that we begin to understand the nature of being human as a spiritual being, or a divine being, or a being that has a consciousness that is bigger than the consciousness of a single human life or human reality. So we hear the expression commonly that historically we've kind of been humans seeking for God. We've been looking to encounter the divine or be forgiven, or to transcend humanity in some way, or learn to forgive or overcome our challenges and these types of things, and reach some state of acceptance or connection with spiritual reality or the divine, to be accepted, if you will, by the divine. But as we move into this new time frame, that all reverses. We begin to realize that we are inherently divine. We actually have a soul, and we come from a soul, and the soul is born into the body, and that has the background or the purpose as to why a person is born in the first place. And so our whole life emanates from this spiritual plane, and our existence on the earth is guided through the presence of that soul. And as that we go through this awakening time, we're starting to remember this multidimensional nature of our reality. And so people are beginning to realize that, for example, there's more than one life. A soul doesn't live a single incarnation. A soul may live many incarnations. So people will begin to remember other experiences and other timelines. They may remember another life they lived, or another experience they had as a soul. What I was shown through this course of visions was that the way the soul interfaces and integrates in the physical form is through a dimension, a reality that we can call the 24th chromosome. And so the 24th chromosome is like an energetic structure or quantum field or lattice of energy that connects the physical body to the spiritual element of energy, or what we might call the higher self, or the soul's aspect of consciousness. And the energy in this structure is present and governing our reality while we're alive on the earth. And as we awaken, this energy, this field is expanding. And as this field expands, so does our understanding of the nature of reality. And so this brings with it a lot of potential for healing and personal transformation. And so the work that I do through Unity Field Healing is geared towards helping humanity take steps in that direction, or to catalyze those positive changes to help them move through the energy of this transition. So a long answer, but I just kind of want to summarize it as best I could so people understand the context from which we're speaking.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing this journey. And I want to ask more about the 24th chromosome and one more question as well. So I don't know which first, but you went through this process of awakening yourself, led by naturally happening events to you. But also at some point, you took a step and you organized this beautiful event in Hawaii in 2017, which was called A Return to Lemuria. And this was so much heart opening. So you basically took a practical step, took an action to bring this way of being and living through the higher self to show us how we were living at some point and what we have to remember and return to. So was there something in you leading you to that?
Yeah, so that was a very pivotal moment for me personally. And really what inspired that event is I had a visitation in a meditation from a very beautiful spiritual energy, a very feminine spiritual energy, who I recognized intuitively as my Lemurian mother, my mother, my Pleiadian mother, in essence, my Lemurian mother from the days of Lemuria. And so as she visited, she blew an energy over me in the meditation. And there was like this cascade of energy that kind of flowed down over my body. And I could feel the intensity of her presence. I could feel the incredible love. I could feel the incredible wisdom that she embodied. And as the energy came down over me, it was like a personal encounter and remembrance, but it also came almost with an instruction set. And the direction was to create an event it was in December of 2019. And so it was to create an event in Hawaii and to have people that I personally knew mostly through my experience with Cryon, and so Lee Carroll, Monica Morani, Amber Wolf, and Kahuna Calais, and to create an event bringing together people who have in their Akash a deep connection with Lemuria and who worked in the healing temples of Lemuria back in the day. And so the event was built understanding it was a time to, the way that it was described was awaken the Akashic remembrance within the healers of Lemuria. And so the event took place. It was an incredibly powerful event. There were beautiful messages and channelings given by all the people involved in the event. There were about 300 people who attended in the end. But what was explained to me was that it's not limited to the people in attendance. It was kind of a catalytic energy. There just had to be enough people there to trigger the awakening, but there would be many people impacted by the experience who were not physically there in person, but who have in their own Akash a connection with this time. And so I was given information from Cryon at that time about my personal connection with Lemuria, how I worked in the healing temples of rejuvenation, and that a lot of the memories and things that I'm being shown are kind of Akashic knowledge that was present in the time of Lemuria. And what was explained through channelings from Cryon was in Lemuria, humanity, one way of conceptualizing the experience of Lemuria is that it was a civilization that marked kind of the beginning of humanity on the planet. And it was a time when the divinity was seated within humanity. In other words, we were brought into connection with the aspect of energy and consciousness that brings divine consciousness into physical form. And so my way of understanding that is it's when the 24th chromosome was first introduced into an evolving planet or an evolving humanity. And so the 24th chromosome in that sense represents the bridge. It's how the soul comes to be embodied. So, for example, if we had a physical body without a soul connection, it would just be a form body. It could still be a life, But once we connect to spirit, once there's a soul that's living in that body, it's through the axis of this 24th chromosome. And so that marked the beginning of a spiritual uh, reality on the earth, or a spiritually integrated and conscious humanity or being. And so through the course of Lemuria, what happened through that civilization is there was a divine knowledge that was brought with this experience. The mothers taught and introduced humanity to unity teachings and high consciousness teachings to help them know how to embody and live in the world of form. So knowing all of that was fine. It was a very special experience, kind of a cloistered, isolated experience in the context of the civilization. But it was known that from that point forward, humanity would go through cycles of experience that would eventually lead it into a much more flourished and advanced expression of that teaching. But one of the things that a civilization has to go through is the experience of good and evil, or the tree of knowledge of good and evil, or light and dark. And so as Lemuria went into a decline, and what really happened was Lemuria was present in what we know in modern day as Hawaii. But at the time, it wasn't just 7 islands, it was a mountain that was risen out of the ocean higher than it is today as a landmass. But the lava field under the mountain began to release. And as this happened, the mountain began to sink and go deeper into the water. And eventually, what was left was what we see as Hawaii today. It's just the tips of the mountains that were once present there as a single mountain. That was then the civilization of Lemuria in the Pacific Ocean. And so as this happened, the inhabitants of Lemuria, who had lived their Lemurian experience, began to leave and go to other parts of the world. So places like South America, Mount Shasta, the Pacific West islands that have a connection with Lemuria, New Zealand, etc. And so this migration occurred at the end of the Lemurian civilization, and it began another phase of human evolution. And so as these civilizations began to develop, the consciousness was less. We were in a higher consciousness time at Lemuria, and then we began to lose consciousness or kind of go asleep. But that's part of a big structure of consciousness that allows a civilization to go through the necessary decline so that they can manifest consciousness around light and dark, and how to be present in a world where there are light and dark elements, but to choose the light and realign with a higher consciousness principle. And so that brings people experience and wisdom that comes through that kind of an experience. And so, in essence, what's happening today is we're at the end of that cycle. We're at the time when that is integrating again, and we're moving back into a higher consciousness principle, a space of understanding unity and the bigger picture that has been missing from humanity for so long, except by, really advanced spiritual beings who came and taught us some of these things over the years. And so as we go through this awakening, this is kind of what's happening in humanity. So that very specific event was about awakening the Lemurian Akash, the knowledge that healers held in the day that worked with the field of energy to help create health, restore balance, rejuvenate the body, etc., and to be able to work in that way with people to bring healing and restoration where it was needed. And so that was really what happened. And it's a seeding if we understand the principle. So what happens is that memory is kind of catalyzed or electrified or awakened, however we might want to understand that. And so that's the beginning of the memory. It starts to awaken, and it helps people begin to remember these things that they hold deep in their own memory, their own historical Akashic record, if you will, or their own memory. And so many people today are living this experience. They begin to remember aspects of prior lifetimes or historical experiences. And whether they remember them consciously or not, it may be sometimes a subconscious experience. They're beginning to remember, so they're attracted to knowledge, they're attracted to information, and they start to read and learn about things. And this is a process by which their consciousness is triggered or expanded. And as they continue through that process, they have their own experiences and often their own memories as well. And so that's kind of what that was all about. Now, another way of understanding it is the time when the Pleiadian mothers brought to humanity a connection with this spiritual realm of energy that we would think of as the 24th chromosome, or the axis of energy. And the way I was introduced to it and then later given more information about it was a soul will come and live many lifetimes on the earth. So we don't live once. Many souls were present at the time of Lemuria. Not all of humanity, but many souls were present at the beginnings of humanity. And these souls were kind of coded with this original information that was taught, but it was then disseminated through the growth of humanity and through, children being born to these parents and many, many, many generations. It was all kind of being disseminated through the development of humanity, if you will. And so when we go forward, as we live through the experiences of the last cycles of time, there have been many positive and negative experiences. Humans have lived very uplifting experiences and very destructive experiences, very dark and negative experiences. And so as we integrate those light and dark elements, we begin to move into a space of wisdom that helps us understand what leads to one versus what leads to the other. And humans begin to make conscious choices so that we can direct our reality and our consciousness towards what we prefer. Now, for most people, of course, that's going to be a positive, balanced, uplifting experience. So people begin to choose to align their life towards that healed outcome. And so as we go into this next time frame, there's a huge interest among humanity in improving, in healing, in digging up ancient memories of wisdom and knowledge, returning to Eastern systems of healing that understand our integration with nature and the elements and plants and all these kinds of things, as well as the indigenous teachings that have been held on the planet by various indigenous communities all around the planet since the original Lemurian days. And so all of this knowledge wants to step back into the forefront and to trigger and catalyze memories and awakenings so that human beings can really begin to shift the evolution of the planet towards that outcome. Now, the challenging thing about this in our experience is as we go through this awakening and this energetic revival, if you will, it also stirs up the energy of memories or the negativity that may have been part of the past. So this is why so often we have to go through healing memories and healing experiences. And so when we look at what happens as an outcome to that enlightenment, is it begins to reveal and expose things that are not in alignment with that principle. And so we go through a rocky time, unfortunately, at the beginning of this awakening. And I think that's pretty easy to understand when we look at the planet and what's happening on the earth, in present day. And you start to question, like, why is all this negativity happening? Why are there wars? Why is there so much of this kind of stuff surfacing on the planet? But when you understand the bigger picture, you realize all of that is happening to reveal, to begin to expose things that help humanity look at it and to create the integration that's necessary to build a world where peace is the foundational consciousness in which the planet dwells. And so it's easy to say that, of course, it's words, and it's not to diminish the horror or the travesties of experience that so many humans are tolerating and living through in these days on the planet, but it's a bigger picture of understanding as to why it's happening and what the outcome of it is. And as a soul, we see things quite a bit differently than we do as human beings. Our souls are really courageous. They're not afraid of the limitations of human life that we are. Like for example, a soul understands its eternal nature. It's not something that is limited to a single incarnation or experience. It understands there's a longer story and a bigger picture. And so the soul is not afraid to take on challenges that we might kind of shy away from as human beings, but it knows the value and the benefit of the ultimate outcome of that experience, shall we say. So humanity will go through this time of reformation and change. And I mention that because sometimes we get in the habit of talking about light and balance and all the good things which are coming, and we forget the nature of what's happening, or we think that we're ignoring the nature of what's happening. And I think we have to pause sometimes and look at it with an honest expression so that we understand what it really represents and what it's a part of. And as we do that integration, we will collectively begin to make choices that push humanity as a collective towards a very different future. And so that's kind of what we're tied up in, I guess, at this point in time on the planet. And so a lot is happening. It's integrating ancient past. It's, predicting a very positive future. It's kind of realigning the energy fields to take humanity from one kind of an experience to another kind of an experience that can be understood to be part of a big galactic process or galactic cycle of time that's integrated in the experience. And so the time is predestined, the time is now, and this awakening is happening on the planet. And it brings with it a lot of grace and healing. And so people are being given the information and the knowledge and the experiences to undergo that healing and to create that restoration. And that's why beautiful events like this take place. It's why conversations like this take place, because they're all part of a much bigger process that involves all of humanity, for sure.
Yes, these events help definitely, and this is the purpose of creating them and go through all the challenges as well. But do I understand it correctly that the 24th chromosome, because we know we've got 23 pairs physical that can be seen under the microscope, it's an energetic structure and it's our higher self. And it was pure in Lemurian time when it was seeded in this pure form, energy form, or I don't know how to say, at that point. And since the decline of Lemuria and spreading the population of Lemuria in many different parts of the world, there was a decline. And you mentioned that this purity or the expression of that's, let's say, of the 24th chromosome started diminishing, and it was because we had to learn how to apply free will and choose between the light and the dark.
Correct.
And actually, we were challenged, and many times we chose the dark road instead of the light road.
At times, yeah.
Correct. Yes. And this led gradually to the decline we have been experiencing today. And
Correct.
what you're saying now is just a different kind of energy broadcast to us from cosmos, because we're a cell in the of the cosmos that is prompting us and helping actually us to make more easily the choosing the light.
Correct.
So is
And
that
so,
yeah.
no, it's brilliantly expressed, Veselka. So that's exactly the way I understand it. But we also have to understand that this is part of a natural process. It's not just because humanity chose dark versus light. It's because the energy was of the planet, and our position of the planet was diminishing. So there are big cycles of time that govern these highs and lows of energy as the solar system travels through the galaxy and so on and so forth. And so there are times when the energy diminishes and we go into like a darker cycle versus an age of enlightenment, if you will. And so it's by design so that these experiences can be set up. They're created as a school, if you will. They're created as an opportunity for souls to experience and learn. And so we have to be really merciful with ourselves, because it's one thing to choose enlightenment when it's easy, but it's very difficult when the energy is very dense and hard. And so you can't even fault us for doing it in that space, because it's so hard to see other opportunities or other possibilities or other potentials. And so every soul has made its own array of mistakes as it's journeyed through time. We all have our own karma, if you will, in that sense. And so every human being has done different good things and bad things. It's had different positive and negative experiences. And as we step out of that time and into the future, we have to understand that. It's why looking with compassion and forgiveness is so essential to healing and the forward movement of consciousness, because you begin to understand all of that was part of a natural cycle that was reflective of the energy of the experience. So we have to look at it, recognize it for what it is, make choices that are aligned with a higher consciousness principle, but at the same time, not hold grudges and merciless observations of people in the past, because we understand we were doing the best we could. And so it's, we can understand that in principle when we look at families, for example, people say, well, my parents weren't perfect, but they were doing the best they could. They gave me the best they could, even though I wish it was better or it could be different in this way, etc. And so you kind of see how humans relate to that. And so as we move forward in this new energy, there's a whole transformation that's taking place in human consciousness. And so it'll become easier for us to align with different possibilities and probabilities and future choices as the energy is happening. This is not just happening to human beings, it's happening to the planet as a whole, to the solar system, to everything in this creation. And so the planet's energy is rising too. And so as the energy of the planet is rising and changing, and the consciousness of humanity is rising and changing, there's a cooperation that takes place. And so we begin to build a different civilization that the earth also supports because of the earth's engagement, if you will, in the process. And so that's kind of the reference for that. But the simplest way to view it is, if the 24th chromosome was fully expanded, we understand intuitively the nature of these things. We understand that we are a spiritual being, that we are a higher self radiance that's manifest in form, that every human being is made of that nature. When I look at you, I'm looking at a spiritual being. When I look at myself, I'm looking at a spiritual being, and we're all part of a spiritual reality. And this begins to introduce the unity that we speak of in spiritual terms. We all come from the same place. It doesn't matter our race, our color, our skin, or our social context, or whether you're rich or poor or anything. All of those are human experiences, but everybody's divine. Everybody is a soul in form. And a profound nature change in nature takes place when human beings begin to realize that. I begin to realize that when I'm speaking to you, I'm speaking to God. When I'm speaking to any human being, I'm speaking to another spiritual being. And so when we begin to see each other that way, we begin to treat each other that way. And so you can kind of see how this slowly infiltrates everyday human life, the way we go to the grocery store, the way we drive in our car, the way we show up in the world in any way, from the simplest little human experience to great revelations of wisdom and knowledge and teaching. And so there's a slow progression, an insidious kind of a progression that takes place where consciousness infiltrates and begins to change the nature of the human experience. And so that's what we're living now as we speak. And so as we go forward, it's not that we will change our essential structure or the way things happen. They'll transform on the basis of higher integration of knowledge and wisdom that comes from a higher plane of energy, if you will. And so we'll begin to transform reality to be more reflective of that energy in all ways. And that'll bring with it new social structures. It'll bring the dismantling of many aspects of the old world that we're leaving behind, but it will also bring new information about healing and the nature of life in the body, and how to bring healing in the body that includes energetic and consciousness aspects. And so you can kind of see why all of this is happening and taking place. And that's all a process of this 24th chromosome waking up, if you will, or being catalyzed, restoring the connection, the filaments of light, the exchange of information, the quantum expression of that structure, and its interface with us in the human body. And so as that happens, this is why so many people today, I often tease people in seminars, I'll say, imagine it's 1950 and everybody's sitting here, and I ask, How many people can tell me about a past life experience that they're familiar with? Everybody would like freeze and look at you and think you're a little crazy, and that's just going too far, and perhaps you're even evil. And so it would create a huge reaction. But if you're in a room full of people today and ask that question, and I do this after I say this, well more than 50%, sometimes as much as 80 or 90% of the people in the room know they've had another lifetime. They either have a very vivid memory of it, an awareness of it, etc. And so it's just a reflection of the change that's taking place, whether we realize it or not. And so that is a simple way of understanding a multidimensional reality. And so if you're present in this body, but you have memory of being conscious and present in another body or another experience, it's two worlds. So you're aware of two worlds at the same time. And so it's a simple way of understanding a multidimensional expression. And we can expand that to begin to understand we exist in other dimensions or realities that we think of as spiritual dimensions or realities at the same time as we're present in the physical body. And so this is the awakening, if you will. And all of this comes through the vector of the 24th chromosome. These are the kinds of things that happen as that structure is starting to awaken. And so with it, we become much more aware of a bigger aspect of our own soul consciousness. And we'll remember lifetimes, we'll begin to remember experiences we've had in those lifetimes. Sometimes we don't remember the experiences, but we become aware of energies or feelings or attractions or likes or things that we're drawn to because of other experiences that we've had. And this is easy to see. For example, if you're talking to someone who loves France, and they love everything about France, and they love the language, and they love the culture, and they're living in, say, North America, they've probably had an Akashic experience in France. They're remembering something they themselves have lived in another time. And so their love of it or their attraction to it is an Akashic memory. They are actually tuning in to that experience and being aware of it. And when we each look at our own lives, we can see all the little things we like and don't like, we prefer, don't prefer. A lot of these habits have come through Akashic history or through experiences in the past. We see that in children today, especially, in these modern days. There are children, so many children being born who have these advanced musical capabilities, or they can sing like an opera star, at the age of 3. And really what's happening there is they have that in their Akash. It's so deeply experienced in their Akash that when they come back and that veil is thinner, they instantaneously remember those things and begin to bring them to life. And so artistic expressions are probably one of the first things that are really evident when we start to understand that. And so that's the reason we have all these kids that are being born with, kind of genius level capabilities, or even sometimes strange and multidimensional abilities, really strong intuition, or able to see energy and these kinds of things. And so, these are all testaments to the process that's happening on the planet. And when we stop and take a moment to honor them and realize what's really happening there, it gives us faith and understanding that there really is something profound happening on the planet that we speak of in terms of ascension and forward movement. And so this chromosome is really the energetic bridge. It's the way that it's been introduced to me. And what was shown is historically in the old energy, when we're born, that the chromosome kind of narrows down almost to a filament. We can barely feel our connection to spirit. It's like it creates this big veil and everything is forgotten when we're born. As it stirs awake and becomes more active, that happens less. It's like when we are alive in the body, we have access to those other memories, to that other knowledge, to the other experiences that we have. And so think about a humanity where human beings have lived 1,000 lives and developed skills and abilities from thousands of different experiences that you have access to in this body today. And so you can see how quickly human potential is going to move forward. And so that's kind of what's happening now. And so it's stirring as this light field expands, as this energy expands, we're connecting, we're remembering, we are having a spiritual experience in the sense that we're remembering the divinity, we're remembering, the light of the nature of human existence, but we're also having memories and experiences from other lifetimes that help us manifest at this present time in this body on the earth. And so all of that's happening simultaneously. And so that's how I understand the nature of the 24th chromosome. The other thing is when that field is shut down, it's hard to bring healing or bring transformation into the human experience because the energy is not there. It's like it has to be awakened. So as this field expands, it becomes easier to manifest these kinds of healings and change. And that's, for example, the work of unity field healing is aligned with that understanding. And so that's why you'll also begin to see people experience pretty profound healings and transformations that may seem kind of miraculous or impossible in the old energy in the old days. And so that too will lead to a revolution in understanding of healing and energy and all those things. And because we'll bring in the energetic aspect of the human body and the genetic information in the human body and how to bring that into the healing paradigm. And so lots of interesting things will happen as humanity unfolds that in the days ahead.
It's really exciting. So basically this 24th chromosome, by expanding this energy field around, is us opening up for inviting this infinite I am, this light being that we are to fully step into the body. Is that right?
That is correct. Yep.
And this awakens this infinite being that we are, and that we are part of everything, and that we are everything, and everything else is us, and so on. How this will affect and impact humanity as we are moving forward in what we're
Yeah, it's a big question. So it will affect humanity in every way we can possibly imagine. So, for example, we have to think about this in really big terms to understand the fullness of the change that's taking place. We're moving from one kind of a civilization into another kind of civilization that we will grow into over what we perceive as time. And so it's not going to happen in a day. It's going to happen over years, even generations, to be honest. It's something that we're going to grow into slowly. What seems slow in human terms, but in cosmic terms, it's the twinkle of an eye because it happens very fast. But as a human living at every second of every minute of every hour of every day, it seems sometimes like it takes time or too long for many of us. And so we need to be understanding or cognizant of the fact that it's a huge, big cycle of 26,000 years that we're moving into and will grow into and flourish over that span of time. And so we're leaving a cycle of 26,000 years and we're growing into a cycle of 26,000 years. And so as we move into that time frame, we're just at the threshold or the beginning of that new cycle. But we're going to see really quick, really fast changes in human consciousness. So the first thing we're going to begin to see is a much deeper understanding of spirituality within humanity. A spirituality that's not external to the person, but internal to the person. It's an experience where we begin to understand that we are souls incarnate, we're spirits living in bodies. And as we move into that understanding, that's kind of the foundation for so many of the other things that change. The other thing that will happen is the nature of human consciousness will be changing. And so by that, I mean, we're going to begin to understand the spiritual nature that we're speaking about, but this is going to awaken within us the capacity to understand how to operate in this new energy. And so in the old energy, we began to operate in a really physical 3D kind of a way. As we move into this new energy, we're going to understand we're all interconnected as human beings and that we have a collective consciousness of which we are an individuated part. And so everybody has a role to play or an aspect of presence that aligns with the whole. And so we're going to begin transforming the way humans relate, the way we build social structures, the way we do education, the way we, create politics, the way we do all these things that'll be impacted by that awakening consciousness. And so that'll be a beginning. It'll kind of create a new foundation for the nature of society and for humanity. And in that space, we will really build a world. And one of the very first things that will happen is we'll understand the foundation of peace. We have to move into a space where we understand that we have to choose peace. We have to be in a world where we choose peace as the foundational expression of consciousness, that we become willing to stop warring and being in conflict that leads to those kinds of aggressions and travesties. And so when we do that, then we can be given, if you will, or begin to remember or be accelerated to build things on the planet that could only be used for good. And so, for example, imagine there's free energy technology, but humanity takes that free energy technology and simply builds more weapons and things to hurt each other. Well, there's no real big advantage in that. But if we develop free technology and we begin to create a planet that has access to freely available energy, then we can use that energy to do all kinds of miraculous things. So you can kind of see how, on top of that foundational consciousness, we're going to be given the things to build a very different kind of a world. And the things we've been dreaming of, the things that humanity has hoped for, in so many ways, will start to materialize in that space. And so we're also going to understand the energetic and what we would call the quantum nature of reality. The old world is very Newtonian in scientific terms. It's all about understanding physics, biology, chemistry, all of those things from the level of the atom up. So atoms, molecules, compounds, structures, etc. The quantum world begins to understand that deep to the atom, there's a whole field of energy that science is beginning to explore. It's described in the realm of quantum physics that talks about dimensional reality within subatomic space. And in that world, we start to understand that consciousness applied becomes the driving principle for experiential creation. So, in other words, something doesn't exist unless there's a consciousness holding it in form. And so, as we start to understand that kind of science, the outcome of that kind of science will also begin to manifest in the world. And so, we're starting to see, really early examples of that kind of stuff, quantum computing and all these kinds of things. But on a human level, humans are beginning to understand that the way they think, the way they poise their consciousness, the way they hold themselves in reality is a creative force. And so many of the things that we experience individually or collectively are there because there's a consciousness holding it in form. And so when we understand that, we can begin to change consciousness. So, for example, if I see myself as worthless and unimportant and no value and a terrible person and all this kind of stuff, and that's the consciousness I'm holding my life in, you can imagine I'm going to build a life that reflects that. If I come to terms with that and I say, none of that is true, every human being has value. I have a purpose for being here. I have a potential in me. There's something I'm here to bring, to give, to be that contributes to the whole of humanity. Then all of a sudden, my whole consciousness realigns and I begin to find expression of that. So it's just a little example, a simple example to understand how shifting in consciousness is such a creative power for humanity. As we move forward in the energy, we're going to be inspired in consciousness in all kinds of interesting ways. And so we'll see things that humans begin to manifest, if you will, because they're inspired in consciousness in that way. And so it's a big answer, but we need to understand not so much the outcome as the process, because it's the process that will lead to the outcome. And people can say, well, we're going to have a world that looks like this, or, humanity relates like this, or we'll have dematerialization machines, or we'll be able to time travel, or we can, do all these things, have free energy, etc. So all of those things are potential outcomes of that future, but we'll build that future step by step, day by day, through the process that I'm describing that's taking place. So rather than be too focused on what it's going to create, I think we need to be more focused on the process that's happening now that's leading to the change, because we learn to work with it. we learn to participate in it, and we learn to awaken to the potential that's contained within it.
Yes, and as you said, everyone has its role. It's a little piece of that. And this new humanity level of consciousness is going to be created by all of us. As you said, not fixating ourselves of what is going to look like, but how am I becoming aligned with that? So I co-create with all the rest, this new
Brilliant. 100% true.
because it's all about us eventually. How what we're choosing, as you said, are we going to choose to be angry with war events and all horrible things that are happening, or are we going to bless them, help in some way, and hold this vision and do something about creating this new energy, new dimensional timeline? I don't know how to call it.
Exactly. Yeah, they're all words that people use that are kind of interchangeable, but it's and they're all valid, in their own ways. So the words are not important. It's understanding kind of the essence, I guess, of the process.
Very exciting conversation, and especially because you still are in this materialistic view of how the body works, the mechanical part of it, the visible part of it, what we can see under a microscope, as you said, up to the atom level. But you're bridging it with the quantum understanding, and you have credibility of bridging these two worlds, and by talking about them openly, we can trust that. We can trust that the difference between the two, and that there is so much more about these experiences. They're much more real than what we are told exists at the moment. So amazing insights, and thank you for bringing all this knowledge to us. And because we're coming up to the end of the hour,
It goes fast.
and fast, really. I just want everyone to know about your free gift, because it's quite interesting, unusual, and enticing, I would say. Would you mention about that? Your
Oh,
free
for sure, yeah. So when I'm doing conversations or interviews and things, I always like to make available the work that I do, the Unity Field work. So what I do is I have people enter a little contest, and I select from each event that I participate in 3 people to win the full audio package of Unity Field Healing, the 3 sessions of Unity Field Healing. So people can learn all about that on the website. They can read about what Unity Field Healing is. And but the contest is to win the actual audios, the full package of healing, so people can engage in the energy and the process of Unity Field Healing through that gift. And so 3 people will be selected intuitively through that process. So people just simply have to enter, and they'll be chosen.
Yes, and I will encourage everyone to enter. The link is below this video. And if they are not chosen, to buy it, because you're offering it at such an affordable price, and it's priceless. I have started with that. Then I joined your practitioner training, and I would encourage everyone to do that, because it's a process of healing yourself, and the process of opening the intuition to see energy and to work with energy. And I think what you're offering is just as Unity Field Healing is accelerating the awakening.
Yeah.
So I really want to encourage everyone to know your work.
Oh,
And
thank you. Thank you for that endorsement.
you're very welcome. It's just personal experience, and I cannot not mention it, really. So would you do you have any final words for everyone here that is watching us?
Yeah. The thing I'd like to say is these are very difficult times, Veselka. Like as we live alive on the planet today, I mean, many of us have pretty stable lives. Others are involved in incredible events that are happening all around the globe. But everybody is stressed a little bit, feels an anxiety, of things happening on the planet, the future, where we're going, the instability of society structures and things that we've relied on for, social support and stability. Everything seems to be shaky and kind of in this period of uncertainty. And there's a reason for that. It's not happening for nothing. It's happening by design. It's a process that needs to happen to help humanity reformat itself into a new version of itself and to come to terms with energies that keep us held in lower consciousness paradigms. And so, if you understand just that simply, you can relate to everything happening on the planet in a very different way. And what's important is to understand the value of peace, the importance for us to find a space and to find a way to still ourselves, to get calm, to reconnect with that consciousness, that energy we all hold inside as our soul that reminds us that everything is going to be okay, and to walk through our challenges knowing that they're bringing us to a new opportunity, to a new place, to a new potential, and to build a network around you, people who understand the process, to build a network of people who understand what's happening energetically and in consciousness, so that we feel supported and part of the forward movement of what's happening on the planet. And so not to lose faith or to lose hope, not to fall into, the confusion and negativity of the stress that can evoke that for people, but to really align yourself with the positive movement of what's happening and understanding the potential, the power, and the outcome of what's going to happen through the change that we're in. And if we surround ourselves with everything we need and we learn to still ourselves and go within, we'll have everything we need. We'll have the resources we need to walk this bridge of change. And the way I sometimes describe it is it's like we've been in a civilization, we're going to grow into a civilization, and we're the bridge. We're actually living that transition and that change. And if you know that and you realize your soul actually volunteered to be a part of it, then you see that you have a role to play in that transition too. You wouldn't be aware of it unless that was true. And so as we each kind of come to understand that and begin to align ourselves with that, we'll have everything we need to build a really brilliant future, a really enlightened and different future than the one we've historically known. So not to lose faith, to have incredible hope and trust and confidence in where we're going, and to really take the time, to give yourself permission to take the time to align your life that way, and to go and be still inside and find that peace that's in you that really helps you walk the world within that consciousness and that alignment. So those are my final words for this moment.
Thank you. Beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. And seeing everything as an opportunity, just
Yeah.
focusing on that. What
Yeah,
is the
exactly.
opportunity? Thank you so much, Joe.
My pleasure. Thank you. And thank you, everybody
All this
listening.
wisdom that comes through you, through your higher self, through the Sirian White Blue Collective as well, and what you're offering. And
My pleasure.
everyone who is watching us is enjoying this conversation with you as always. So I want to thank you, and thank you everyone that is watching us too. So
Thanks again.
all the blessings on what you're doing.
Thank you.
On the path of everyone. Thank you.